Welcome back to the deep dive. We sift through the latest research, the newest insights, really, to bring you what we think are the most important nuggets of knowledge.
And today, we're going somewhere maybe a bit unexpected.
Definitely unexpected. We're looking at a specific corner of the world to tackle, well, one of humanity's biggest challenges, climate change and the energy transition.
Yeah.
We're unpacking a really fascinating piece of research today. The full title is The Value of Fast Transitioning to a Fully Sustainable Energy System, the Case of Turkmenistan.
It is a bit of a mouthful, that title.
It is, but the implications, I mean, they're potentially huge, right? Not just for Turkmenistan, but maybe for lots of other countries facing similar energy puzzles.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is that this study looks at a country with an almost absolute reliance on fossil fuels. We're talking natural gas mainly.
Right.
And it asks this, well, pretty audacious question. Can they actually switch? Like 100% renewable energy system. Is that even possible?
And crucially,
And maybe even more critically, can they do it in a way that makes economic sense?
yeah,
Because that's often the big sticking point.
that's the core of it, exactly. You might think, okay, a country swimming in fossil fuels, they'd resist this kind of change, surely. Or, it would just cost way too much.
The usual assumption.
But this study, it offers this really compelling counter-narrative. It's got some surprising findings on cost efficiency, environmental impacts.
Yeah, it really turns that assumption on its head.
So we're going to explore how they modeled this huge transition, what the different pathways look like in their scenarios, and what the key takeaways might be for all of us, really, wherever you were listening.
Okay, let's do it.
So given that ambitious vision, maybe we should start with the reality. Like Turkmenistan today,
Good place to start.
it's a Central Asian country, about 5.5 million people, mostly desert. So how deep does this fossil fuel dependence actually go beyond just, keeping the lights on?
Oh, it's deep. Turkmenistan is one of the very few countries globally with such an absolute dependence. In 2019, something like 99% of its electricity, just think about that,
99%.
came from natural gas power plants.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of gas. They're the sixth largest holder of proven reserves in the world. That shapes everything.
Wow. Sixth largest. Okay, so that's the power grid. What about other basic things like heating homes or getting around?
Not just electricity, heating. 95% of households use individual gas boilers.
95%.
Yeah. And transport heavily relies on subsidized fossil fuels.
Yeah.
They're kept artificially cheap.
Subsidies.
Exactly. And historically, utilities have even been free basically since the end of the Soviet Union.
Free utilities.
Yeah. So that leads to this, profound lack of awareness or, frankly, any incentive for energy efficiency among people. Why bother if it's free? So it creates this really specific, very challenging starting point for any kind of energy transition talk. It's not just a technical puzzle. It's like embedded in the way of life, the economy.
So, okay, you've got a country just completely entrenched in fossil fuels. You've got maybe little current political or social drive for change because of these historical freebies and subsidies.
Right.
And practically zero installed renewable energy capacity. I think the study mentions the only thing is a tiny 1.2 megawatt hydro plant from, 1913.
Yeah. Ancient history in energy terms.
That really does set the stage for, a monumental shift, doesn't it? It sounds almost impossible from that starting line.
It absolutely does. It
Yeah.
really underscores the incredible leap that this study is suggesting is possible.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Despite this total fossil fuel dominance right now,
Yeah.
this study highlights Turkmenistan's incredible yet almost completely untapped renewable energy potential. It's like this hidden treasure just sitting there.
Absolutely. That's the flip side. The country is just blessed with these vast desert plains. You're talking nearly 300 days of sunshine a year. Significant wind resources, too.
Wow.
This study estimates, immense potential for utility-scale solar power and also significant wind power. Enough to power the country many, many times over.
Many times over.
Oh, yeah, with plenty left for export, potentially. They mentioned the high global horizontal irradiation. Basically, the amount of sun hitting the ground is just phenomenal. One of the best spots on Earth for solar.
So just to put that in perspective again, almost all their electricity now comes from just a few gas plants.
Right.
And you compare that existing setup to the potential for these vast solar farms, huge wind farms. Just try and imagine the scale of that transformation. This study is really about leveraging that massive natural gift they have.
It really is, and it raises this important question. Okay, you've got these vast, completely unused natural resources. What if you could actually model a pathway to harness them?
Right.
The potential for clean energy generation, not just for themselves, but maybe exporting it to neighbors.
Yeah.
It's enormous. If, and it's a big if, they can get over those initial hurdles.
So how do you even begin to map that out? I mean, such a radical change for a whole country, almost from zero. The study uses a specific tool, right? The LUT model.
Yeah, the LUT Energy System Transition Model is pretty sophisticated.
Tell us about it.
Well, it simulates the entire energy system.
Hmm.
And that's key. It's not just electricity. It's power, heat, and transport sector. All three integrated to find the most cost-optimal pathways to get to full sustainability. It factors in, well, everything you can think of. Current energy demands, obviously, but also renewable resource availability. Solar, wind, hydro, bioenergy, geothermal.
Okay.
Existing infrastructure, grid connections, even things like population density and how it's spread across the country's regions.
That sounds incredibly complex. What sort of assumptions does it have to make when it's, crunching all those numbers?
It considers, I think the paper said, 108 different generation and storage technologies. For each one, it looks at projected installation costs, operational costs, both fixed and variable, how long they last, the pace of technological improvement, how quickly things are expected to get cheaper or better.
Right.
And crucially, it's aiming for the least cost energy system overall. That's the optimization goal. While also considering potential constraints, like CO2 emissions costs, putting a price on carbon.
Okay, so cost is central.
Very central.
Right.
And the model works with a really high time resolution. It runs hourly simulation.
Hourly, for decades.
Yeah, in 5-year steps from 2020 out to 2050. So it simulates what's happening in the energy system hour by hour, day by day, season by season, for 30 years.
That's an incredible detail.
It allows for a really detailed understanding of how the system needs to work, balancing supply and demand constantly. It even differentiates heat demand by temperature levels needed and transport modes like electric vehicles versus petrol cars.
That really is a deep dive into the data. It gives you a strong sense of the scientific rigor behind these findings, which you need, really, when you're talking about such massive changes.
Exactly. You need that level of detail.
So the researchers didn't just model one possible future, did they? They looked at several different ways things could play out.
No. They explored 7 different scenarios, which is smart because it lets us understand the impact of different policy choices, different speeds of change.
Okay, walk us through them briefly.
Sure. First, there's the current policy scenario, or CPS. That's your business as usual baseline. Assumes basically no new action on emissions or sustainability. Just carry on as they are.
The do-nothing option.
Pretty much. Then CPS 30, this is a kind of delayed transition. Renewables only really start getting introduced from 2030. It sort of simulates, maybe, responding later to international pressure.
Okay, a slow start.
Then you have 4 best policy scenarios, or BPS. They labeled them BPS Saint, BPS 3, BPS 4, and BPS 5. These explore different speeds of renewable integration, getting progressively faster. BPS 5 is the most aggressive, aiming for a rapid 5% annual increase in the share of renewable capacity.
Got it. Faster and faster.
And finally, there's the best policy scenario without carbon costs, BPS UOCC. This one helps us isolate the pure economics. It takes out that financial penalty for emissions and shows what happens then.
So you can see how much the carbon price itself influences the outcome.
Exactly.
So for you listening, you get this full spectrum, right, from doing absolutely nothing all the way to really aggressively chasing sustainability. And that helps highlight the consequences and maybe the benefits of each path they might take.
Precisely. It maps out the possibility space.
Okay, so after running all these complex simulations, looking at all these scenarios, what did the study actually find? What's the big headline takeaway for Turkmenistan and maybe for other places too?
Well, if you connect it all back, the most striking finding is, honestly, it's a bit jaw-dropping.
Oh, yeah.
100% renewable energy system, pretty much regardless of the specific transition speed they modeled, will actually end up being lower in cost than just continuing to rely on fossil fuels.
Hold on, lower in cost, really?
Yeah.
Not just comparable, but cheaper to go fully renewable.
Cheaper, yeah.
That completely flips the script, doesn't it? Especially for a country so rich in gas. What makes that possible in the study? How do they figure that?
It's a huge finding. And the scenario with the fastest transition, that BPS 5, actually resulted in both the least cost system overall and the quickest cut in greenhouse gas emissions.
The best of both worlds.
Exactly. They calculated the levelized cost of electricity,
Okay.
the LCOE, which is basically the average lifetime cost of generating power.
Right.
And in that BPS-5 scenario, it could drop from about 87 euros per megawatt hour in 2020 to less than 45 euros per megawatt hour by 2050.
Wow, that's nearly half. What's driving those massive cost reductions? Where does the saving come from?
It's really a powerful combination of things. First, obviously, the ever-falling costs of solar PV and wind turbines. That's absolutely key.
We hear a lot about that.
And the study projects that by 2050, in these best-case scenarios, solar PV provides over 75% of all electricity.
75% from solar alone.
Yeah, with wind contributing significantly too. Together, they make up over 90% of generation. But it's not just cheaper generation. There are also these massive efficiency gains.
Ah, efficiency. How so?
Through widespread electrification, particularly in the heat and transport sectors. Think about electric heat pumps, for instance. They're incredibly efficient. For every 1 unit of electricity you put in, you get maybe 3 to 4.5 units of heat out.
Right. Much better than just burning gas.
Way better. And electric vehicles are similarly much, much more efficient than internal combustion engines. Less energy wasted as heat.
So you actually need less primary energy overall, even if the population grows or people use more electricity for heating and driving? Because the tech is just that much better.
Correct. That's a key point. Despite population growth, despite potentially higher final energy demand for services, the total primary energy demand, the raw energy input needed, actually goes down in almost all the renewable scenarios.
That's counterintuitive, but makes sense with efficiency.
It does. Now, there are significant upfront investments needed, of course. The study talks about over 10 billion euros over the coming decades to build all this new stuff.
Okay, that's not small change.
Not small change.
Yeah.
But the long-term operational savings, primarily because you have zero fuel costs for solar and wind,
Right, the fuel is free.
make it economically superior to sticking with fossil fuels, especially if you factor in volatile gas prices or potential carbon costs.
Yeah.
The study even points out that if you remove subsidies for fossil fuels and price them at proper market rates, renewables often win purely on cost today.
That really does make you question the hidden costs of sticking with the old ways, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so a 100% renewable system sounds fantastic, economically viable, but it immediately brings up that classic question. Reliability. What happens when the sun goes down or their wind drops? The study must have looked at that.
Oh, absolutely. That's the crucial question for system stability, isn't it? And the answer lies in flexibility,
Yeah.
especially energy storage and sector coupling.
Storage and sector coupling. Okay.
So for managing the daily ups and downs, utility-scale batteries become the dominant storage option. They charge up during the day when the sun is strongest
Makes sense.
and then discharge later in the day into the evening peak. They're perfect for those daily cycles.
Right, but what about longer periods? You know, a week of cloudy weather or the big difference between summer and winter demand, especially for heating. Daily batteries won't cover that.
Exactly. For those longer durations, and particularly for meeting seasonal heating demand, the model shows gas storage playing a vital role. But, and this is important, it's not storing fossil gas. It's storing synthetic natural gas, SNG, gas that's produced using renewable electricity,
How does that work?
usually through electrolysis to get hydrogen from water, then combining that hydrogen with captured CO2, maybe from the air, or industrial processes to create methane, basically synthetic natural gas.
Okay, so green gas.
Green gas, yeah. That can be stored for long periods, seasonally. And heat storage technologies also played a role, matching supply and demand to the heat sector directly. The studies suggest they cover about 15% of heat demand by 2050 in the fastest scenario.
Interesting. What about those sectors that are really hard to just stick a battery in, like aviation? You need super energy-dense fuel for planes.
Good question. The study addresses that using what are called power-to-X technologies.
Power to X.
It's basically using renewable electricity, the power, to create other energy carriers or products, X. So you could produce sustainably sourced hydrogen or go further and create synthetic kerosene-type jet fuels using processes like Fischer-Tropsch.
So you can make jet fuel from renewables.
Essentially, yes. This allows the aviation sector to get to zero net greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 in these scenarios. Now, it might mean aviation fuel costs a bit more than today, but it makes that sector sustainable too. But overall, for transport as a whole, the final energy demand actually drops significantly, mainly because electric cars and trucks are just so much more efficient than petrol or diesel ones.
Right, so lots of efficiency gains there again.
Huge gains.
Okay, this is really fascinating. What's striking is that, as you said, this isn't just about Turkmenistan. It feels like it has much broader implications. So, what does this all mean for policymakers there, obviously, but also for leaders in other countries?
Well, for Turkmenistan itself, the results are pretty clear. They serve as a strong guideline that sticking with business as usual is not only unsustainable environmentally, it's actually going to be more expensive.
That's a powerful message.
It is. And a renewables-based system allows progress on all three pillars of sustainability,
Hmm.
right? Environment, obviously, but also economy and society. Things like energy security, potentially jobs. It looks like a win-win-win.
And you mentioned it's not necessarily unique to Turkmenistan. Could other countries take these lessons?
Precisely. The study suggests the structural results about the speed of transition, the costs, the benefits, are likely highly transferable,
Yeah.
especially to other countries in the Sun Belt.
Sunbelt countries.
Yeah, nations with similar, really abundant solar resources, and often also a heavy reliance on fossil fuels currently. They mention places like Iran, India, Bolivia.
Mm.
These countries could potentially see similar benefits because the underlying economics and technical advantages of renewables, especially solar in sunny places, are becoming pretty universal.
So it really underscores that this isn't just about tackling climate change anymore. It's fundamentally about creating economic value, building a more resilient, maybe more self-sufficient economy, too.
Absolutely. The study really highlights the high economic relevance of renewables, especially if you pursue accelerated policies, like in that BPS-5 scenario. It also implies, local job creation building and maintaining all this new energy infrastructure.
Right, local jobs.
And that point about costs, even without carbon pricing, if you just remove the fossil fuel subsidies,
Right.
that really raises a big question about the true, often hidden costs of our global reliance on fossil fuels.
It certainly does. Given, though, that the study acknowledges the current lack of political will in Turkmenistan, the heavy subsidies, what could actually compel change there? If the pure economic argument doesn't immediately win the day, what are the potential drivers?
That's the practical challenge, isn't it? The study points to a couple things. Increasing international pressure could be one from trade partners, global climate agreements perhaps,
Okay.
and also, unfortunately, the growing frequency of extreme weather events driven by climate change. Turkmenistan won't be immune to those impacts. That might force governments like theirs to accelerate the transition sooner than they currently plan.
Reality bites eventually.
Essentially. And the study also makes a smart point. You don't necessarily have to scrap all the old infrastructure. Existing gas pipelines, for example, could potentially be repurposed to transport and store renewable gases, like that synthetic natural gas we talked about.
Ah, so avoiding stranded assets.
Exactly. It makes the transition smoother, potentially more politically acceptable, too, using what you have, but in a new green way.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all back together. This deep dive into the value of fast transitioning to a fully sustainable energy system, the case of Turkmenistan.
Mm.
It really delivers quite a powerful message, doesn't it?
It really does. The core message is, here's a country starting from almost 100% fossil fuel dependence, but blessed with huge renewable resources. And yes, it can transition to a fully sustainable energy system by 2050.
And crucially.
And not only is it technically feasible, showing that renewables, coupled with smart storage and integrating different sectors, can meet the nation's energy needs hour by hour. But it's also economically advantageous. It actually leads to lower overall system costs compared to sticking with fossil fuels and dramatically cuts greenhouse gas emissions.
With solar and wind really doing the heavy lifting.
Absolutely. Solar PV and wind power emerge as the absolute dominant forces, supported by batteries for the daily balancing act and things like synthetic gas storage for the seasonal shifts, plus that comprehensive sector coupling for heat and transport.
So this study, it really serves as a potent reminder, maybe, that this energy transition isn't just some environmental obligation. It's actually a profound economic opportunity.
Exactly.
Even for countries whose identity and wealth are currently tied up in fossil fuels, it challenges a lot of old assumptions and offers a pretty tangible blueprint, or at least a modeled possibility, for a more sustainable and maybe more prosperous future.
It really does.
Yeah.
Which maybe leads to a final thought for you listening.
Go.
If a country like Turkmenistan, starting from such an incredibly challenging baseline, that absolute fossil fuel reliance, those subsidies, the current low political will, if the modeling shows they can achieve these kinds of economically beneficial and environmentally vital results, what possibilities does that unlock for the rest of the world, for the rapid, cost-effective global transition that we so desperately need?
That is powerful stuff to chew on. A very different perspective. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another essential deep dive.